with his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnnie Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnnie Walker Dread Show.
On August 27th, the Kenosha County DA charged Rittenhouse with Wisconsin's most serious crimes, among them first-degree intentional homicide, the mandatory punishment for which is life in prison. Other felony charges included reckless homicide, and he was also charged with a misdemeanor, underage possession of a dangerous weapon. Thomas Binger, the assistant district attorney assigned to the case,
Boo. And a real scumbag, by the way,
has said, "We don't allow teens to run around with guns. It's that simple."
As a reporter, you should know that he made that comment within the certain context of a legal discussion, and you have stripped out that context. And I have a lot of videos on it, if anybody cares.
Conservatives denounced the homicide charges as political, noting that both Binger and Gravely, the district attorney, are Democrats.
Well, a little bit more than that. Gravely is in tight with BLM, and it looks like Binger might be as well. I got another video coming out here at some point about that connection. It's just not that they're Democrats, but it looks like they have pretty heavy leftist leanings.
Criminal defendants who cannot afford a lawyer are typically appointed a public defender, but so many conservative and far-right figures rallied around Rittenhouse that private counsel was all but assured.
You can almost hear Paige Williams thinking to herself, "Oh, damn it. That's not fair. They made a $2 million bond and people raised money to spring him like they did for Crystal Kaiser. Why couldn't he just be left to rot in jail and get assaulted?"
Among the attorneys who stepped forward was John Pierce, a civil litigator in Los Angeles, who believed that in the digital age, lawyers needed to gang tackle, swarm, and crowdsource. His firm, now known as Pierce Bainbridge, had reportedly received $9 million from a hedge fund, Pravati Capital, in what the American lawyer called possibly the first public example of a litigation funder investing in a law firm's portfolio of contingent fee cases. The firm would bring cases against big targets, and Pravati would receive a cut of any damages. Critics have called forms of this practice legal loan sharking. Pierce secured a few high-profile clients, including Rudolph Giuliani and Tulsi Gabbard, who sued Hillary Clinton for saying that the Russians were grooming Gabbard to run as a third-party presidential candidate. But by the spring of 2020, Pierce Bainbridge reportedly owed creditors more than $60 million. Last August, Pierce launched a charitable nonprofit, the Fight Back Foundation, whose mission involved raising money to fund lawsuits that would take our country back. A Trump supporter, he was hostile toward liberals and often expressed his views crudely. One Saturday, during an argument with his ex-wife, he unleashed a stream of increasingly threatening texts, including, "Go watch an AOC rally, f***ing libtard, I will f*** you and your kind up," and "People like you hate the USA. Guess what, bitch? We ain't going anywhere." Not for the first time, she obtained a restraining order against him. Fight Back was registered in Dallas, where one participant, a lawyer named Lawson Pettigo, had joined Pierce in representing the former Trump aide Carter Page. Pierce and Pettigo were also working with Lynn Wood, a well-known defamation attorney. When the Kenosha protests began, Fight Back leaped into the fray, declaring that law-abiding citizens have no choice but to protect their own communities, as their forefathers did at Lexington and Concord in 1775. The Rittenhouse shootings gave the foundation a face for its cause.
This connection between Kyle and the militia that John Pierce and Lynn Wood made really worked against Kyle's best interests. And while I'm not going to get involved too much in the whole lawyer thing, the real sad part of this story is that a couple of lawyers decided that Kyle represented the perfect platform to advance their agenda. And it was all centered on militias and patriots and Trump. Kyle got caught in the middle here.
The Rittenhouses never returned home. Wendy and her daughters were staying with friends when Pierce tweeted an offer to represent Kyle, who had been transferred to a juvenile detention center in Illinois. "We'll fly up there tonight, and I will handle his defense with team of best lawyers in USA." The Rittenhouses' experience with the criminal justice system was limited to Mike's history and to a battery charge against Wendy.
Actually, their experience with criminal law was probably about equal to John Pierce's and Lynn Wood's. The whole idea of assembling the best team of lawyers in the United States to represent you, that works fine, but you don't need civil lawyers. You need criminal lawyers. And unfortunately, they didn't give him any. They thought that they understood all the in and outs of criminal law. They didn't. This is what happens when you move outside your wheelhouse. If you're a civil lawyer, you are not a criminal lawyer. I would just as soon go with a public defender than have a civil lawyer represent me on a criminal case.
The month before Kyle was born, she pleaded guilty to spitting in a neighbor's face. Pierce's Harvard law degree was limited to Mike's history and to a battery charge against Wendy. The month before Kyle was born, she pleaded guilty to spitting in a neighbor's face. Pierce's Harvard law degree impressed them, and on Twitter, the family could see him discussing Kyle alongside elected officials such as the Arizona Congressman Paul Gosar, who tweeted that Rittenhouse's actions had been 100% justified self-defense. Pierce met with the Rittenhouses on the night of August 27th. Pierce Bainbridge drew up an agreement calling for a retainer of $100,000 and an hourly billing rate of $1,275.
I know that the Rittenhouses felt that it was really good to see a lot of people rallying to their side, but when they're politicians, that has a real drawback. And that just reinforced the idea that Kyle was an alt-right symbol. A good criminal defense attorney would never have done that.
More than twice the average partner billing rate at top U.S. firms. Pierce would be paid through Fight Back, which, soliciting donations through its website, called the charges against Rittenhouse a reactionary rush to appease the divisive, destructive forces currently roiling this country. Wisconsin's ethics laws restrict pretrial publicity, but Pierce began making media appearances on Rittenhouse's behalf. He called Kenosha a war zone and claimed that a mob had been relentlessly hunting him as prey. He explicitly associated Rittenhouse with the militia movement, tweeting, "The unorganized militia of the United States consists of all able-bodied males at least 17 years of age," and Kyle was a Minuteman protecting his community when the government would not.
Another tragic mistake made by Kyle's defense team. You can argue the whole militia thing in court, but you take that out to the public, and there's going to be a large percentage of the public that are just going to simply reject that argument. You can't simply ignore public perceptions here. This is going to be a case centered on PR, but this was really bad PR. What they should have been emphasizing was Kyle's a young kid. He's a community volunteer. He likes to go and help people. He was there to help people with his medical kit. He was ambushed. He had no idea that something terrible was going to happen that night. He carried the rifle for his own protection. There are plenty of examples where Kyle really did try to help people. That's the message that his lawyers should have been pushing from the get-go. Instead, they saw this as an opportunity to put Kyle as the hood ornament for the Patriot movement. And that has not worked in Kyle's favor at all. And keep in mind, Kyle is not alt-right. He is not a militia member. He's not interested in this militia thing. But his lawyers were.
Wendy often appeared with Pierce as a mama bear defending her son. He didn't do nothing wrong, she told an ABC affiliate. He was attacked by a mob. She publicly threatened to sue Joe Biden for using a photograph of Rittenhouse in his campaign materials, promising, "I will take him down." Such partisan rhetoric rallied support among conservatives convinced that liberals were destroying American cities with impunity. As donations streamed in to Fight Back's website, other contributions were offered directly to the family for living expenses. Certain donors further yoked Rittenhouse to the militia movement. In September, the group American Wolf, self-appointed peacekeepers in Washington state, presented Wendy and Pierce with $55,000 in donations, after having taken a 20% cut. If Pierce seemed erratic and incendiary, he was more than matched by Lin Wood. A civil litigator in his late 60s, Wood rose to prominence in the 90s when he won defamation suits on behalf of Richard Jewell, the security guard who was wrongly implicated as the Centennial Olympic Park bomber. Wood often went on TV to defend clients. In 2006, he told the publication Super Lawyers, "A media appearance is really a mini-trial. You may be advocating to a jury of millions." After Wood represented the family of JonBenet Ramsey, the 6-year-old girl murdered in 1996, observers characterized the family's flurry of defamation lawsuits as legal vigilantism. After Donald Trump was elected president, Wood's work became noticeably ideological. He represented Mark and Patricia McCloskey, the white couple in St. Louis who pointed guns at BLM protesters marching past their house. He represented Nicholas Sandmann, the Kentucky high school student who sued various publications for their depiction of an interaction that he had while wearing a MAGA hat with a Native American activist in Washington, D.C. Sandmann eventually fired Wood.
Oh, by the way, she's kind of sugarcoating the whole Sandman case, if you'll notice.
People close to Wood noticed troubling changes in his behavior. According to a recent lawsuit by 3 lawyers who worked with him in Atlanta, Wood asserted that Chief Justice John Roberts would be exposed as part of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring, and that Trump would name him Roberts's successor. Wood denies making these statements. The lawyers, who were suing to cut their business ties with Wood, cited repeated abusive behavior. In a voicemail, Wood called one of the lawyers, Jonathan Grunberg, a Chilean Jewish fucking crook, and on another occasion he allegedly assaulted him in an elevator. Wood has called the lawsuit frivolous.
Keep in mind, everybody, this is supposed to be an article about Kyle Rittenhouse. And notice how she's turned this to be an article about Lin Wood and John Pierce. Hey, I'm no fan of these lawyers, but I think that we have drifted away from the topic here a lot. Who cares about the personal characteristics of Kyle's lawyers? It's not relevant. These were only on his civil team anyway. But keep in mind our audience. This is the New Yorker. And so butchering Lin Wood and John Pierce is going to be a really popular thing. This is what's going to help curry her favor amongst her friends.
Wood, who became Fight Back's CEO on September 2, 2020, attempted to turn Rittenhouse's legal case into a cultural battle, calling him a political prisoner and comparing him to Paul Revere. He tweeted, "Kyle Rittenhouse, at age 17, warned us to defend ourselves." Wood implied that patriots were needed for an even bigger fight, a looming second civil war. His Twitter bio included the QAnon slogan WWG1WGA, where we go one, we go all, and he became a leading promoter of a conspiracy theory claiming that a secret group of cannibalistic pedophiles has taken control of the United States.
Again, I just don't think that this is relevant to Kyle Rittenhouse.
In the first few weeks of Fight Back's campaign, Wood announced some 11,000 people donated more than $600,000. The foundation paid Pierce and produced a publicity video, Kyle Rittenhouse, The Truth in 11 Minutes, which framed the case as one with the power to negatively affect our lives for generations. A narrator intoned, "This is the moment when the home of the brave rise to defend the land of the free." Wood called the case a watershed moment for self-defense. Pierce tweeted, "Kyle now has the best legal representation in the country." Pierce was a civil attorney, not a criminal defense lawyer. A double homicide was not the fucking case to learn on, one experienced defense lawyer told me. In Wisconsin, a homicide case requires representation by a local lawyer. Rittenhouse hired 2 criminal defense attorneys in Madison, Chris Van Wagner and Jessa Nicholson Getz, who had the understanding that Fight Back would cover their legal fees. The Madison lawyers quickly concluded that the Fight Back arrangement wouldn't work for them. Van Wagner told me, "When you have crowdfunding of a criminal defense, they take over. They have their own political agenda." He recalled that one Fight Back conference call began with, "Hello, patriots." The defense attorneys also found Pierce and Wood's media presence compromising. On September 7th, they emailed Wood, "Almost all of the news today about Kyle's case centers not on the case itself, but on the 2 lawyers who have publicly identified themselves as his lawyers, as well as on the cause-oriented foundation." They reminded Wood that a proper defense of Rittenhouse should be the lone objective. Around this time, Pierce announced that he was stepping away from Fight Back's board and tweeted that he wanted to avoid any appearance of $$ conflict. But in the email, Van Wagner and Getz told Wood that they could not proceed unless the foundation addressed financial questions swirling around Pierce. They asked Wood to deposit the Rittenhouse donations into a conventional bank trust account under the sole control of Kyle's mother, along with a bank trustee. This would ensure that the funds are used solely for the purposes for which people donated them. These demands were not met, and the Madison lawyers left the case. Fight Back's website noted that contributions could be channeled to associated law firms for other purposes. The foundation had announced a fundraising goal of $5 million for bail and other costs, and at first the site displayed a progress bar: $1.9 million on September 23rd, $2.1 million on October 1st. The ongoing tally was then replaced with a simple Donate Now button. On October 30th, Rittenhouse was extradited from Illinois to Wisconsin. His first Kenosha County court appearance was scheduled for a few days later. Wood tweeted that Fight Back needed to raise $1 million before then. Wisconsin is a cash bail state. A defendant must pay the full amount in order to await trial outside of jail. The court had set Rittenhouse's bail at $2 million. Given that Fight Back had supposedly reached that benchmark weeks earlier, Wendy wondered if the Fight Back lawyers were leaving Kyle in jail as a fundraising ploy. Wood calls the notion blatantly false. In mid-November, Wood reported that Mike Lindell, the CEO of MyPillow, had committed $50,000 to Kyle Rittenhouse Defense Fund. Lindell says that he thought his donation was going toward fighting election fraud. The actor Ricky Schroeder contributed $150,000. Pierce finally paid Rittenhouse's bail with a check from Pierce Bainbridge on November 20th, well over a month after Fight Back's website indicated that the foundation had the necessary funds.
Ouch.
The fact that a suspect in a double homicide could raise so much money and get out of jail struck many people as another example of an unfair system.
Yeah, they're not complaining about Crystal Kaiser being able to raise the money to get her out of jail, are they?
The minister Bernice King, the youngest child of Martin Luther King Jr., tweeted that Khalif Browder was held at the Rikers Island jail complex without trial for allegedly stealing a backpack. Browder spent 3 years at Rikers and later hanged himself.
Okay, Khalif Browder was denied bail because his theft actually violated probation. Furthermore, he was offered a plea deal and refused it. The problem with Khalif Browder was that the court system in New York had backed up terribly, and people were being put on delay for their trials, and there's no excuse for it, in my opinion. That's a violation of constitutional rights, but it had nothing to do with Khalif Browder's race. We should also note that Khalif Browder committed suicide after he had been released, so he was not in prison at the time.
Moments after Rittenhouse was released, he jumped into an SUV driven by Dave Hancock, a former Navy SEAL who now worked in security. Hancock told me that he started working for Wood in March 2020 and became Fight Back's executive director that September, but found Wood's volatility untenable. He has no filter and no bottom, Hancock told me. One night in October, during an argument, Wood grabbed Hancock's handgun from his holster. Hancock and Wood parted ways. Hancock was still on decent terms with Pierce, though, and had said yes when Pierce asked him to extract Kyle from Kenosha. In the SUV, Hancock gave Rittenhouse new clothes from Bass Pro Shops and an order of chicken McNuggets, then drove to Indiana. Pierce, a Notre Dame graduate, had relocated Rittenhouse's family to a safe house near South Bend. The arrangement astonished one attorney, who later said, "Why does Wendy Rittenhouse think she's entitled to a free lawyer and free housing? Because John Pierce and Lynn Wood told her she was."
I'm not certain I follow that person's logic much. Okay.